Well, good morning, everybody. It's still morning, though it's not quite afternoon yet. So I'll take very little time because we have three amazing speakers who have come in from various parts of the country and the world. So I just want to give them as much airtime as possible. But basically, I think we're moving from a wonderful session on startup for SMEs, etc., to something that is a big problem to be solved by the world. I think all of us know it, whether we are in entrepreneurship or in large companies. And we all know about, the whole world is going to grow. I mean, in terms of temperature, it's going to rise by 1.5 degrees, and that is being optimistic. It might be worse if we don't do something about sustainability. So just as a background, many of us have been thinking about this for quite some time. I myself am a charter member of TiE Pune and privileged to have built two companies from startup stage to fairly large organizations, AppTech and then Zensar Technologies. And I still remember in Zensar, a little 40 crore company, the team set itself an agenda saying that we will, although we were a listed company even at that stage, we said we will focus on what we call the triple bottom line: profits, people, and planet. And I used to get a lot of flack in the early days from analysts and stock market saying, shouldn't you guys just be focusing on profits? I said, no, that's not the way to build. And that time, the word sustainability was not known. But we said, we really want to build an enterprise which is successful on all three parameters. And I'm happy to say that we built a company which had less than 3% attrition in days like today where people are like flying off like leaves. And also did something very significant through our centers in Pune, Hyderabad, as well as in South Africa and in the US, to really work for the community. And I've found from that point onwards that sustainability is something that we cannot ignore or we cannot say we'll do it later. Today, I'm privileged to serve on fairly large boards. I chair Honeywell in India, and Honeywell, of course, is both a producer and a practicer of sustainability worldwide. More important, India's largest bank, State Bank of India, where we've actually defined sustainability as 4 parameters, that not only can you look at sustainability from a process point of view, which is why digital banking and everything else is so much more important today, but also technology itself. I mean, the move towards green data centers, the very conscious move to say that, look, are we contributing to global warming by anything new that we are doing for shareholders or customers? The third dimension is sustainability for customers. We have a lot of many senior citizens who are among the 40 crore customers of State Bank of India. And we want to make sure that through doorstep banking, aggressive use of technology, we are making it much easier for them to travel less, more from a convenience point of view, and the saving the planet point of view. And last but not the least, of course, as the most significant bank in this country, to play a role in sustainability of the ecosystem. So not just our fintech partners, the whole startup sandbox that we use to inculcate or bring in startups into our system, I think is extremely important for us to look at sustainability. So what we'll do in this panel, ladies and gentlemen, is going to talk about all these issues. I mean, today, of course, ESG is a buzzword everywhere. And it's not just environment, it's not just social, it's not about governance. Today, governance is pretty well handled in large organizations, particularly in public limited organizations. But I think it's important to say, what are companies, not just what I said about State Bank or Honeywell, but what are large companies thinking of in terms of sustainability? Also looking at what is the imperative for people like us in this room, entrepreneurs, young companies, to think of sustainability as we start. And last but not the least, what is the opportunity in social to scale in a very big way and get the social sector to think about sustainability. So for this, we've invited 3 amazing speakers, and I'm going to invite them to come on stage. The first is Thomas Verghese, who actually runs the 1.5 billion textiles business of the Aditya Birla Group. The Birla Group needs no introduction. It's a multi-billion-dollar group, as you know. So Thomas, please join us on stage. Then we have Ruchi Mathur. Ruchi is IIM Ahmedabad alumnus of 1995 and then worked in the corporate sector, and today has been running a very significant social enterprise called Lighthouse Communities Foundation. And finally, we have my friend Ronald, who shuttles between the Netherlands and Delhi and has built this absolutely amazing story, all India, called Women on Wings. So I'm going to get out there and start with you, Thomas. Tell us your views from a large company point of view on how should we look at, what is the lens through which we should look at sustainability?
Thank you, Ganesh. I think good afternoon, everyone present. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I'm amidst a lot of people who are working in the social sector. So my role as a business head has been mainly to manage companies and businesses. But in the last 10 years or so, I've seen a very major transformation. 10 years ago, when the head of sustainability used to come to me and say that, look, we are going to get inundated with carbon taxes, I really didn't believe him. I didn't think it would happen. But as the years unfolded, I could see that carbon tax in some form or the other has been imposed on us, including through things like coal cess and many other forms of deterrent for burning more and more fossil fuels to get our energy. So we began our journey of sustainability almost a decade ago. And initially people were very skeptical. I started having these annual conferences of all my businesses spread across 7, 8 countries. And people were wondering whether, I've really lost it, that I'm calling people to talk about conservation of energy, reducing electricity demand, reducing water, reducing waste. And I think for a couple of years, people were still skeptical. And I think it's really interesting now to see that in this changed world order, like Ganesh said, it's not really anymore a buzzword. I think sustainability has become integral to how we as corporates should do business. Because without a sustainable business model, without sustainable products, without sustainable processes, it is going to be extremely difficult for organizations to find a top-of-mind place with consumers globally. So what is sustainability really? I mean, you hear every day now the words like greenhouse gas, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, reduction of wastage of water, recycling of waste. I happen to work in an industry which is a $1.5 trillion industry and slated to reach $2 trillion in just next couple of years. In this industry globally, only 1% of the textile raw material that is used is recycled. Only 1%. And almost 87% of the products, which actually runs into 115 million tons, finds its way either mostly in landfills or goes in for incinerations. So you can see the magnitude of the problem that is being created by this industry. Almost 20% of the wastewater globally is coming out of the textile industry. And this is trillions and trillions of gallons of water. So I think many countries around the world, and I must say that EU has taken the lead in this, has come out with some very stringent norms for controlling both greenhouse gases, reducing waste, reducing the water usage, and most importantly, another buzzword which every one of you must be hearing these days is the whole concept of circularity. And in no other industry, as much as it is relevant to textile, because it's also one of the largest global job providers in the world, circularity has come to stay. Every brand worthy of any kind of following globally has announced major plans to ensure that they will only deal with organizations which promote the concept of circularity. And what is circularity here? It is, this is almost like a dilemma. You have a world which was driven by fast fashion, which is the world of Inditex, Zara, etc., where they would have 52 collections in a year against the 2 or 3 collections which are the norm for this industry. Which means they said that if a consumer walks into my store every running week, he needs to see something new. And this really has led to massive amount of consumerism and consumption of textiles. Apparently, almost 35 kgs of textile is discarded every year by an American citizen per capita in the US. And I'm sure the numbers are equally large for many developed parts of the world. How does the world deal with this problem? It's a problem of plenty. So a lot of interesting regulations are coming which is going to promote longevity, which is going to promote the use of recycled garments. H&M, as you know, the Swedish company, has already started. They set up a few pilot stores where you can go and give in your clothes, get it recycled, and take it back in the form of whatever clothes you desire, your design. So every brand worthy of any kind of global following has announced plans for complete use of recycled products, whether it's cotton, whether it's viscose, whether it's polyester, whether it's linen, whether it's wool, or any of the other type of fibers that are used. And we are trying to bring in the concept of longevity. The old values are coming back. In fact, I've been reading a lot of articles recently saying fast fashion is out. And fast fashion will have to be out if this consumerism, which has gripped the world in terms of people just buying things and throwing it away after some time, has to come to an end. So, you know, it's very interesting what's happening around the world. There will be new business models coming up for recycling. There are new fibers which are coming out which are amenable to recycling easily. And we are going to see a world where there's going to be less use of water, less use of greenhouse gases. That means energy in fossil fuel form, reduction both in absolute terms and in terms of per unit of product produced. And added to all this is the whole issue of water. And many technologies are getting developed where you dye a product, you need much less water, maybe 50% or 70% less water. And I'm sure that all these trends at the end will help the planet deal with this problem of plenty, problem of proliferation of textiles, and bring some amount of sanity into this world. So, you know, we at Aditya Birla Group have been working on this. I have been personally very passionate about sustainability, and therefore it's almost been a 10-year journey for me. And very happy to say that we are one of the few textile organizations globally which have now been reporting on the GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative, for almost 7 years running now. And which means every parameter of ours, whether it's science-based targets, whether it's water, whether it's greenhouse gas, whether it's waste, is being publicly announced to the world through the GRI reports. So for many of the entrepreneurs who are starting off and for many of the startups, please remember that sustainability is going to be equally important to the consumers tomorrow as it is to you in terms of good business. And of course, none of us wants a 1.5 degrees increase because a lot of the world will disappear with that 1.5 degrees increase. So thank you again for having me here, Ganesh. And I hope what I said makes some sense to the audience.
No, absolutely, Thomas. I think it's a very timely warning, and I'm glad that you have a note of optimism that, you know, not only consumers, but corporations, whether large or small, will take sustainability seriously, because before it becomes almost too late, I think we need to get started. So let's switch tracks to social. And yesterday, if some of you were there in the opening session, you'll remember the chairman of Adobe, Shantanu, said that, look, apart from everything else, organizations have to set out to have a purpose. And I think there are many people who have now discovered what true purpose is. In India, of course, there are multiple formats of purpose. But I'm going to throw it open to Ruchi Mathur. As I said, Ruchi is herself the co-founder and CEO of a very significant social organization in India called Lighthouse Communities Foundation. And Ruchi, why don't you tell us your views on this topic?
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to dive straight into the topic. Very happy to be here talking about sustainability in social enterprises, because in fact the word sustainable is embedded in the vision and mission of Lighthouse Communities Foundation. We are really in the business of enabling sustainable livelihoods for young people from low-income communities across India. And what do we mean here by sustainable? It is about long-term livelihoods. So it's a different take, but very important take, because something which is, very key in the livelihoods business is that it's not about only a young person getting a job, but if the person doesn't actually sustain beyond 3 months, what is the point of having made all that investment? So when we started out in 2015-16 to solve this problem of sustainable employment, one of the key aspects was that when we design, we need to design such that young people are actually able to have the resilience to be out of their comfort zone and continue in organizations. And many of us here have experienced that, sometimes there are opportunities given to low-income youth, but they're not able to rise up to it. And we feel that, aspirations are not there. You're very right. For reasons that are no fault of theirs, aspiration building is something that has not happened for young people from communities. And so the design actually is led by enabling agency in youth. So when young people come to the Lighthouses, which is one of our flagship programs, they actually go through a 50-hour foundation course program, which is just around discovering self, getting in touch with my hopes and aspirations, and making my own decisions. Maybe more about the design later if we have time. But what I want to talk about is the other aspects of sustainability that are woven into the model. So our mission really is to enable this agency and livelihoods, but at scale, because the problem of unemployment is at scale. And so there were 4 questions that we set out with, that A, is it possible to have a partnership with a government where the government is also contributing, because that is what would make financial sustainability happen and, scale happen as well. Number 2, again on the financial sustainability front, can we have a model where we are not dependent on institutional funding? And so many of us are actually, we are entrepreneurs here, and we know the importance of seed funding. But here it was about building a model that is financially sustainable on its own, without just on the basis of, operational funding. Third aspect was that in order to have what Ganesh spoke about, ecosystem sustainability. There are so many different organizations that are working on livelihood in the city. We started out in the city of Pune. So can we have a collective action approach? Because then as a program, if we are working with other non-profits, other subject matter experts, and of course government and the private sector, then as a program there is long-term sustainability and replication possible. And fourthly, can we have some societal sustainability, which means that as a city, is it possible to actually saturate the city or reach an inflection point so that the norms related to aspiration, wanting to work in the formal sector start shifting? And when we asked these questions to people, people said, look, this is too idealistic. It's not going to happen. It's not been researched. And right now you have a great commissioner called Kunal Kumar who was there when they started off in Pune. But the moment he changes, everything is going to come to a halt. So we still stuck with it. And today, we actually have a model where the government is not just matching, but giving more than what the private sector puts in terms of operational expenses. So around $1.5 million, more than that, 13 crore rupees per annum is what the government puts in, and donors contribute the amount, to actually run the programs, but government is putting in the money for the rental in terms of the locations where we are running these fantastic large spaces called the lighthouses. And they've also spent $2 million just in one-time expenses to renovate these spaces. Number 2, we started with a corpus of all of 9 lakhs, and just based on operational efficiencies and, the model itself, last year we have, had an expenditure of 12 crore rupees. So yes, that financial sustainability has been built into the model. Collective action-wise, we've worked with more than 100 skilling organizations, 6,000 employer organizations, where 12,000 young people who've got jobs so far have been placed. And a fantastic donor ecosystem of more than 40 donors, I think some of them are in the audience today, who've helped to actually make this happen. And indeed, we have reached an inflection point. In Pune, for example, there are 10,000 youth who have got placed. Today, when we go to the airport, we meet someone who's checking us in. It literally happened to one of our colleagues 2 weeks ago, who's from the Lighthouse. When I go to a Starbucks and people are there who are alumni of the Lighthouse. When I go to a mall, then there are people there who are alumni of the Lighthouse. They're everywhere, and this is what saturation in a city means. So very happy to have shared a little bit of this journey of different kinds of sustainability built into skilling and livelihoods as a sector. And most welcome to come on 4th February to Pune, where we are doing an opportunity run where young people across the city, thousands of them, are going to run for opportunity and also in the process inspire other young people to come and enroll into livelihood programs. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Ruchi. I think it's a fantastic story because unfortunately in our country, we all have some suspicions of large company versus civil society versus government. The fact that you have brought everybody together into one holistic ecosystem is truly, as you said, a sustainable model of social. So let me quickly move to Ronald. And Ronald and I know each other for many, many years. And he's been doing some amazing work in India. So Ronald, tell us your story. And also tell us what you think social sector can contribute to sustainability.
Right. Thank you very much, Ganesh, for having me. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm really happy to be part of the panel today and shine a little bit of light on sustainability and social enterprises, which actually sounds a little bit as a pleonasm to me, because to my opinion, every social enterprise needs to have that sustainability angle. However, I think the challenge for most of the social enterprises is to become sustainable in the long run. So I think if we talk about social enterprises and sustainability, in the future, I hope, of course, in the coming 10 to 15 years, that we don't talk anymore about social enterprises, but that every enterprise actually has had that social angle, where we actually start talking about in each and every organization about the triple bottom line. What is the impact on people? What is the impact on the planet? And what is the impact on profit? Because social enterprises, many times we think, they are not for profit, but to us, as Women on Wings, we try to build social enterprises which really find this triple bottom line, where profit is definitely part of it, because you need profit to become sustainable in the long run. But our experience over the past 15 years working in rural India, where we aim to co-create with social enterprises 1 million jobs for women in rural India, is that the biggest challenge actually is scale. Scale in a way that you can sustain yourself and where sustainability is part of it. And if you look at the challenges for these social enterprises, actually they are on 3 parts. The one is access to market, the other one is access to finance, and the other one is access to mentoring. If you look at access to market, if we really want to create sustainable social enterprises, we need to change probably our way of working, where everybody wants to reach out by each and every enterprise to the market. And what you see is a quite scattered landscape which is happening, where aggregation definitely is the way forward, where we really have to see how we can join hands and create really a fist to the market where we can really create impact. So we need aggregators, and we need to think of new models where we involve our buyers in our social endeavor. In one of our companies we work with, we have developed a model where the buyer actually becomes part of the whole process, where in this case it's about organic cotton, where the buyer pays an acre fee to the social enterprise, which gives them the opportunity to invest 3 years in farmers to convert from traditional farming into regenerative farming. And the buyer buys back the cotton and converts it into products. So these are wonderful new kind of partnerships where you actually, from farmer to consumer, create the business models. If we talk about funding, access to funding, we talk about impact investors, slow capital, but that's really something that needs to be revisited again. Actually, if you look at the term sheets of many social impact investors, they are not different from others. And we still look, actually, in the long run, about the financial returns, where we think that you really have to look again at the triple bottom line, also from an investment perspective. So that needs to be revisited. And last but not least, partnerships, because every social enterprise wants to have their own awards, wants to build their own brand, really wants to be visible. But I think what we learned after COVID or during COVID is that we can't do it alone anymore. We have to build ecosystems together. Ecosystems of social enterprises where we use the strength of different companies instead of just trying to do everything yourself. But building an ecosystem means that you have to set aside your ego. And that's maybe one of the biggest challenges for the future of becoming sustainable social enterprises. So if I recap, access to market, aggregation, collaboration. Access to finance, please have a look at the triple bottom line. And I think blended finance, where it is a mix of partly free capital, charity, but also skin in the game and accountability could be the way forward. And the other one, partnerships, building ecosystems together and set aside your ego. And that's why I want to leave it.
Thank you, Ronald. And just to conclude this session, I mean, as you know, everybody in the world is talking about climate change. I think we're all obsessed about it. Fortunately, in India, if you look at ESG, a fair amount of work has happened. In fact, India was actually pioneering when they introduced the 2% of average of last 3 years profits into social. And I think it's helped a lot of people to participate in the social sector, which is so important for inclusion. Today, of course, we have big challenges. Prime Minister Modi has committed that India will be net zero by 2070. Now, 2070 may look a long way away, but if you don't act today, and as Thomas was saying, you know, the kind of work that Birlas are doing, if we don't all act together, we'll not be able to succeed. So thank you very much for listening to us. I know it's a complicated concept called sustainability and social enterprises. I'm delighted to tell you that I'm part of a global SIG that TAI has set up, which is sustainability and social enterprise. And we